Yo, Devy Junkies, Brandon here from the Devy Deep Dive Podcast and creator of the Devy Dashboard. Welcome to week 3 of the Devy Huddle. This will be a live show every Tuesday night at 9 o'clock, and I am here with a lot of my Dashboard supporters. How you gentlemen doing tonight?
Doing good, man. How about yourself?
Yeah, doing great.
Yeah, we're excited to talk about a few things tonight. We're going to first kind of go over the news and kind of we have a structure for this segment. We're going to, for the show rather, we're going to do a stock watch segment. Then I come up with a burning question of the week, and then we're going to, basically preview week 4's game. So, like I said, this is a live show every Tuesday night at 9 o'clock on this YouTube channel. So I appreciate you tuning in. And if you are tuning in, please ask us a question. We want questions. We want a lot of questions. So feel free to shoot them. So, guys, let's just get right to it. It was, we were talking pre-show about how much we have to enjoy every week, soak in every week, because it goes by way too fast. Week 3, we had some exciting news. We had some exciting kind of developments, right? So I want to get everyone's take on the first bit of news I want to talk about is we had a Demas showing for Texas A&M, right? I thought he was dead in the water. And all of a sudden he appears, and within, I think, an hour of games, he has a 70-yard bomb or some crazy shit like that. And everyone on Twitter goes crazy. So my question to the panel is it for real? Is it a mirage? Or, is it going to be, can we count on him for weekly production moving forward? I know, Haynes, King is out right now with that leg injury. But what's the panel think? Christian, why don't you start us off? What do you think he has in store for us for the rest of the season?
Just like you, I forgot he even existed. When I heard Demas scored, I was like, surely they're talking about Dante Demas from Maryland, who's on fire this year. I mean, surely it's not the one from Texas A&M who's been, MIA since he's gotten into college. But I've got to see it a few more times. Like I said, I wasn't expecting to see it at all. And it was only on 2 receptions. I believe he had 2 catches, 70 yards, something like that, 100 yards. So it was just that one big play. So I want to see that he's going to be more involved, see it happen a few more times. But without Haynes King there, I mean, I'm not a huge Calzada guy. I think it's going to be hard to rely on anybody in their passing game. But the backs, I like at A&M, but I'm out on their receivers for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, even Anais Smith, you don't think he has any translatable skills?
I like Smith, but he's kind of that hybrid player. I still kind of think of him as a running back, but I guess he's a true wide receiver now. But yeah, I like Smith, but not Demas.
I'll tell you, I've seen Smith up in some rankings that are pretty high. I mean, top 6 or 7 wide receivers in a couple draft boards, which is interesting. So, anyone else have any thoughts on Demas?
I'm with Christian. I have to see it at least one more time. The kid has all the talent in the world. He has all the tools. He was extremely raw coming out of high school. And Jimbo doesn't play people that he's not confident in, right? So if he doesn't think that Demas can perform, he's not going to put him on the field, just like his freshman year. So I'm hoping that maybe this is a sign that Jimbo is gaining a little bit of trust from him in practice. He did flash, I think 1 or 2 weeks ago. He had a couple of plays in practice. So, but I want to see it one more time before I can trust it, just like Christian.
Sure. Anybody else have any thoughts?
I was just happy to see him on the field, catch a couple balls. I was beginning to wonder if we were ever going to see anything from him. So it's encouraging. Hopefully he carries it over and builds a little bit of momentum going forward.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts? Yeah, well, I guess we'll just have to see how he makes out. I know a lot of people probably traded him away as part of a package. A lot of people have been talking about him as far as what to do with him as far as a dynasty asset. So, we'll have to see what happens. So, like I said, I think everyone agrees we got to see more. So, I think the big story of the week was probably the Slovis injury again, and the fact that Jackson Dart came out. I did a game film. I don't know if you guys saw it. I put it out on the Slack chat and everything on the dashboard. And I was impressed. I recorded my podcast actually this afternoon, and he was my film review player. I liked what I saw. Dwight, did you have any chance to see that game or anything?
I've caught bits and pieces of it, and I do really like what he brings to the offense. He just brings that a new energy. It's fun to watch him play. He's not afraid to run, not afraid to sling it. for a freshman, he definitely looked like he belonged there, and Slovis hasn't for quite some time. So I'm really excited about it. I hope he keeps the job. So Dart's he's been a riser for the last 6 months for me. I mean, it seemed like he came out of nowhere in the process. Had a really good camp, good end of his last year, or actually he missed the last year in school, didn't he? He missed his senior season, I believe. So he just kind of seemed like he came out of nowhere and just started shooting up. Everybody thought Miller Moss would be the next guy, and then Dart comes out of nowhere and just he's got flair, man. I love watching him, man. He's got that moxie that I really love that way that he plays. So yeah, I hope he keeps it, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think they're both questionable for this week. I think there is no, I think Slovis, his injury isn't serious, and he banged up his knee and has been a little sore. But making that game film for me, I thought that he looked like a gamer, a gunslinger. I mean, he elevated that team, and everyone played better. Sometimes I think quarterbacks have that ability. Kind of happened with Nick Foles here in the Eagles with, that whole team kind of rallied around that new energy. So anybody have any thoughts? Did anyone see that film I made? I'm sure you all watched it as soon as it came out, right?
He's got a fire to him. He's got some fire to him. Like there was a couple of times where he took off and ran, and he got up and he was just pumped up. I don't know, maybe if it was his first game or if that's just how he is, but he has this fire in him. And as soon as he took over, he started off a little bit shaky, settled down, and I think he really elevated the rest of that team. Slovis has some limitations when it comes to his arm and mobility, and I mean, Dart just opens up that offense. And the coach that is loyal to Slovis, he's no longer there.
Right.
Yeah, I think we've just gotten used to seeing USC look kind of stale, and that's the USC we've been used to lately. I mean, seeing the 45 unanswered points, I mean, we haven't seen USC like that in a while. I was having flashbacks to the Carson Palmer, Matt Leinart days. I mean, this could be the next big USC quarterback, and I don't see how they go back to Slovis. I mean, like Rich said, he elevated that team quite a bit. That is a completely different USC team than we saw the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I've been high on Slovis during the process for the most part, but I feel like the more I watch him, the more I realize he's just kind of not that explosive of a guy. It's kind of that same point of, he's not the type of guy that can consistently drive the team down the field and put up 45 of unanswered points or however many it was. So if Dart's that guy, I mean, I think they got to stick with him. We'll see. Slovis probably gets another chance, I would guess, but I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. I think I didn't get around to watching the Dart game, unfortunately, but based on what everyone's saying, it sounds like he's just got that fire that Slovis might not have.
Yeah, I watched that Dart, the USC game live as it was happening, and it was exciting, man. I was watching it with my stepdad. He's a USC fan, and it was just kind of ho-hum, 14-0, 7-0, and then 14-0. But Dart really sparked that thing, man. It was exciting watching him. If you're a Drake London owner in Devy or CTC, I think you got to be excited about Dart potentially taking over that job, because those two had a hell of a connection. And one more point on that is we're talking about DJU coming in his second year, right? He had a few games where he started last year, and he's struggling still, statistically at the very least. And seeing Dart come in, freshman, never played in a college game in his life, to play like that and have that kind of fire, I mean, that's the kind of guy I want to target.
Yeah, he definitely elevated the game, and London, you're right. So he targeted him heavy. He loves that deep ball catch radius that London has down the field for sure. So, all right. So a friend of this show, Felix, everyone knows Felix. He was on last week. Now he keeps saying how Haener is going to be a quarterback, a quarterback. I was hoping before this show, I'm a little unprepared, I guess, to watch more of him. I just didn't get it with my challenges at work today. But have any of you guys watched, Haener? I mean, is he like somebody could he be the Zach Wilson next year? I mean, I have to give Felix credit. I don't know if you're watching or not. You better watch this. But last year Wilson, he was all over Wilson early. I got to give him props. And this is his 2021 Zach Wilson pick. So any thoughts on that? I mean, have you guys watched him much?
I've watched some, and I did see that Felix was pumping him up. I want to say week 1. So he was early on this one. But I mean, I don't think he's a round 1 or 2 prospect. I think he's around 3 or 4. I don't think he has the arm strength. He doesn't have nearly the arm strength as Wilson. I'd say comparable to maybe Mac Jones or Joe Burrow, if that. But I mean, I think that he has the tools that somebody could take him at around 3 or 4 and work with him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually working on that's one of the ones I'm working on right now, Brandon. I just recorded the UCLA game the other night and was going to get that up for you, but he's cool. A gamer. He's just like, but the arm limitations are what worries me. He doesn't have that, but that doesn't mean he can't stick around the league. I mean, we've got Kirk Cousins sticking around the league still, and his arm talent is, it's all right. So that's the biggest thing on Haener, but man, watching the grit at the end of that game, like hobbling down the field, and that's the shit you love to see, man. I want I want that in my quarterback, man. I will take that. He'll find a spot, man. He'll find a spot in the NFL. He'll stick around for a while. Starter, we'll see. It's just
Kirk Cousins is the name I was going to bring up too. I mean, I think that's kind of what he's shooting for. That's his ceiling is becoming Kirk Cousins. And Brandon, I think you asked us this the first episode of this in week 1, and my answer was no. I mean, he's not. He's a solid college player, but he's got that small frame, the arm limitations. I just don't see it, but the more and more we're seeing this Fresno State team doing what they're doing and how they're doing it, I think this guy's special. I mean, he could be that later round pick that sticks in the league just because he's got the moxie and the good head on his shoulders and everything else, and finds his way into a starting job 3-4 years into his career. Who knows? But I definitely think he's going to play in the NFL, but I don't think he'll get the day 2 draft capital. But I'm more intrigued than I was before because, I mean, you can't ignore what he's doing. It's very impressive.
Yeah, I got to jump in on this one a little bit because I think I might have been the only one outside of Felix that was actually higher than consensus on this guy. So, I was pretty high on him coming into the season, and this was another game I was watching live. I didn't catch the whole thing, but I jumped in on the second half, and man, that throw that he made there at the end on that drive, right, taking that big hit. And he, we're talking about arm strength, but he fit that thing in to a tight window. So I was impressed with his arm strength at the very least on that throw and the toughness that he showed, hobbling on the field, like Dwight was saying. And then UCLA goes down and scores again. And the guy comes back and leads another touchdown drive, man. I had goosebumps. I literally had goosebumps watching that. And I moved him up quite a bit in my rankings, guys. I think I have him inside the top 70 now. So I do see him potentially as a day 2 guy. I really do.
Cool. I love it, man. You could go with your gut. I always say that. Go with the guy that you like. If you die on the hill, there's always another, hill to get on, I guess, right? I don't even know if that's a saying or not. But
it is now.
It is now, right? I mean, if you die on the hill, then roll down and get on another one because that's what it is. All right, so Shipley was named the number 1 guy, right, for Clemson. So Dixon hit the transfer portal apparently today. Phil Maffa doesn't appear to be a thing. I don't think Kobe Pace was ever going to be a thing. So it looks like, Shipley is going to be, I unfortunately have no shares of Shipley. I went in a different direction, when he was getting taken in the second round of our supplemental C2C drafts. I've got probably too many shares of Maffa right now for my liking and not enough of Will Shipley, but obviously it's early. How many of you guys got lots of shares of Shipley? I didn't see that game. I know he scored 2 touchdowns last week. Or this past weekend. Did anyone kind of see his ability there?
No. I don't have many shares, but I think he's impressive, and I think it's huge that he's going to be the guy this early into his career. Because when you look at some other guys in this class, L.J. Johnson, Kamar Wheaton, we're not going to see them get the workload that Shipley's going to get. So, I mean, Shipley's going to hit an extremely early breakout age. I mean, he's going to be Clemson's, RB. I mean, the stock is up for this guy. He's already got the recruiting pedigree. I mean, this is going to be a guy we're going to be taking in the first round of drafts going forward. I mean, this cements it really, unless he just flops, which I don't see happening.
Yeah, I just he's the only running back ranks, put him right behind Trevion, in that 2024 class because nobody else has really emerged. We're going to see a little bit of, Donovan Edwards with Michigan keep blowing people out.
Yeah, Kiner's looking good. LSU.
Yeah, Kiner. So we got a little couple glimpses. Anybody else have any thoughts?
I mean, at this point too, he's the only bright spot in that offense. Clemson has been a train wreck so far. They've been just terrible, but he's been their only bright spot. He's played well. And I mean, as a true freshman, if he's going to be named the starter, you obviously have to move him up in your rankings from where you had him before.
Right. Yeah, sure. So let's stay on Clemson before we get to the stock watch segment. And so what do you guys put in here for the news, which I thought it would be interesting to talk about? We should probably chime in on both of these quarterbacks, but DJU again with an unimpressive game. I mean, are we? How worried are you guys that he might just not live up to the billing, or we try not to overreact, which is what we talked about on the show last week. But we're still, I think CJ Stroud started off a little rough, but I see him progressing a little bit, getting a little bit more comfortable. DJ, I feel watching that game, still his decision making is a little. He just doesn't. I guess the word that I look for when I watch him is he doesn't feel comfortable.
No,
you
can tell.
Yeah. Dwight, do you have any thoughts on DJ? I mean, did you have a chance to see that Clemson game, or were you spinning records Saturday night?
I'm always every Saturday night, baby. I've watched a little bit. I'm not overly worried. I did bump him below Bryce Young, just because I do want to see it, but it's there. I still think it's there, and there all of a sudden it's going to click. Maybe not this season, maybe next season. Hopefully, he's just going to start chucking it 450 yards. I worry about the offense as a whole. Like, I've been hearing a lot of podcasts lately talk about how they don't have any different types of receivers. They all have the same archetypes of receivers. Is this the whole offense is just not right? Something's not clicking right, and you can't put it all on his shoulders. I saw enough in those 2 games last year to know it's there. I mean, he torched Notre Dame. I mean, it's there. Yeah. So I'm not bumping him down to like QB 10 or anything, but I did bump him down below Bryce Young. So
yeah, I'm totally with Dwight. I did the same, bumped him right below Bryce Young, but it's early. He's played 5 starts, and exactly like you said, he looked electric in 2 games last year. So I mean, he'll have time. He's still 2 years out from the draft, so he's sure to turn in some good performances. Give him at least a couple more weeks before you panic, if not at least the full till the end of the season before you panic on him, because high recruit, good program, and he's already shown what he can do.
Yeah, I think
a lot of this falls on Dabo too.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I think a lot of this falls on Dabo too. He's not adjusting. I mean, he's been blessed with having Deshaun Watson and then Trevor Lawrence. He hasn't had to change his offense. He's not adapting, So teams are starting to figure things out, and he's so far he hasn't had the capability of changing things up. I mean, DJU does look bad. Like, his mechanics are out of whack. He doesn't look confident at all. But a lot of this does fall on Dabo as well.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of a
run Shipley. I'm sorry.
It's kind of a dangerous game to completely base our projections based on what we saw from him last year. Totally different situation, right? He was coming in for an injured Trevor Lawrence was out with COVID or whatever it was. And he did play well, and he did flash those tools, but I might be a little bit more concerned than you guys. I haven't bumped him down super far, but he has. I think I'd moved him behind Howell. I think I moved him behind Howell in my rankings. So he's gone down a little bit, definitely behind Bryce Young. Thing I'm concerned about, look, he has all of the tools, right? He's big, he's strong, he can move, he can sling it. But wasn't that Jamarcus Russell too? You know what I mean? I mean, at some point we got to see that it factor from quarterbacks. And I know it's early, and I'm not saying he won't get to that point. But how long do we make excuses for guys like that because of that pedigree?
Yeah,
I think people are.
Go ahead,
Brandon.
No, go.
I think it looks worse than it is because of how good Bryce Young is playing. We've compared the two of them in that class the whole time. I mean, they're even both from California, both 5-star recruits, number 1, number 2. I mean, we've been comparing these guys from the beginning. And, we had DJU ahead of Bryce Young coming into this year, I think largely because of that Notre Dame game. We saw it happen on the field. And now we're seeing Bryce Young do it on the field pretty effortlessly. I mean, the guy's making no mistakes. I mean, he looks really good. And then here's the Clemson offense just stagnating, struggling to score against Georgia Tech. So imagine if Bryce Young was struggling as well, and we're looking at this 23 class, like, who's really lighting it up? I mean, Haynes King's hurt, Harrison Bailey's failed. I mean, it's not like there's anybody here jumping DJU in that class, really. So the big adjustment for me is the fact that, yeah, Bryce Young's probably better than him, but I don't know that anyone else in that class has come up and said, hey, look how much better I am than DJU. So I think anyone that's moved him past QB2 in that class is overreacting. But I also think if you haven't moved Bryce Young ahead of him, you're just not watching the games,
Yeah.
Oh,
for sure.
without a doubt. I mean, they're in the machine there. All right, let's get to our stock watch question. And I got a question on here, which I'm super pumped about, from one of my favorite guys in this whole fantasy space, Big Knowledge Football Dynasty podcast, Sonny from the West Coast. And he has a question here for the panel. Is Sean Tucker, Syracuse running back, will he translate to the NFL? I can't say
That's my guy.
Sam.
I can't say that I've watched a lot of Sean Tucker, but Sam, your eyes just lit up. I saw your face.
That's
It
Sam all day.
went crazy. So go take it away, Sam. You tell Sonny, is he going to make it to our dynasty rosters?
Well, I've watched a lot of Sean Tucker. I've watched him live in person about every game that he's played. Actually, that's not true because last year I couldn't make it the games. But I mean, the skills that he shows on the field, I think, are absolutely translatable. He's got good footwork. He's got good vision. He's got great burst. He's got power. He can break tackles. He still needs to prove pass catching. That's the main thing I need to see from him. He did catch a few passes last week, which was nice to see. It's the first time he's really gotten multiple targets in a game, I think, or maybe he did one time last year. But yeah, he had 3 catches last year. One of them was like a screen. I think 2 were screens actually. But he took that one screen for 75-yard touchdown. And I know the ACC doesn't have a lot of good defenses, but last year when he played against Notre Dame and he played against Clemson, he did pretty well too. So, we've seen him do it against competition. I definitely think his skill translates. Again, still need to see the pass catching skill set, and still need to see him consistently do it more against better defenses because he's really only had 2 games against solid defenses where there's like any form of NFL talent. He does get to play Clemson again this year. I think it's either the weekend after this one or maybe another week after that. So definitely going to circle that one. But no, I'm a little biased as a Q's fan, but I think he's absolutely legit. He's got 4.5 speed. He's got great power. He's already got NFL size, vision,
Nice.
Footwork. Everything's there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess, Sonny, anyone else have anything to add about Sean Tucker?
Well, so we were talking on the Slack chat during the week and then Saturday too. And then when he took that reception to the house, I think it was me and Sam, we were going like crazy, all caps, Sean Tucker taking it to the house.
Sure.
Like he said, that's the one really area that is the concern is the receiving. Now, he plays at Syracuse. So when he plays the poor competition, he really has to light it up. He doesn't have to light it up against the big schools, Clemson, Notre Dame, stuff like that, but he has to be productive still against them, right? So,
right.
But like you said, he has great vision, excellent burst, very strength. I think he's going to go to our dynasty rosters as well.
Cool. All right, let's get to our stock watch segment. And Christian, why don't you start us off? Who you got on the stock watch segment?
Yeah, for me, it's the South Carolina running backs. So Kevin Harris and Marshawn Lloyd specifically. Harris had the huge year last year with Lloyd out, vaulted into some people's top 5 for this 2022 class that I saw in some preseason rankings, no worse than 7 or 8. So a guy that we did think was going to get drafted and have a good career. And then Marshawn Lloyd obviously has the prospect pedigree. We were excited to see him come back this year and flash that talent that we saw in high school and, eat into that workload with Kevin Harris. And that's just not what's happened. I was looking at the South Carolina rushing stats just to where I was prepared to talk about this, and it was even worse than I thought. So South Carolina not only has Zaquandre White that's outperforming those two, they even have another running back, Juju McDowell, that's outperforming those two. So both of those running backs I just mentioned have over 100 yards on the season. Lloyd and Harris have 95 and 64 yards respectively, both averaging under 4 yards a carry. And I mean, it's not going to change. I mean, South Carolina is going to run this committee all year. We're just not going to see the production that we want to out of these guys. And, from what I've seen out of Lloyd, it looks nothing like the high school player that I saw. So I don't know that, Harris and Lloyd have anything to salvage this year either. They're just going to keep plummeting down our rankings, I believe, for the rest of this season.
Yeah, I think I talked about Marshawn Lloyd last week and how disappointed I was. I got too many shares of him. That's going to be dead weight, I'm afraid. So I don't know. Not much I can. I mean, I just did my running back ranks on the dashboard. He went down significantly. He's just not. We're not going to see the production. So until I see him on the field have a breakout game and have a highlight reel that says, okay, yeah, that's what I'm anticipating, I can't get too excited for him. So I'll go next. I always talk about on my podcast too. Just the tight ends need some love around here because nobody likes to talk about tight ends, and I understand. not people get excited, right? But I like to at least try. I mean, last year I was very much in the Pat Fryermuth. He was like my guy. Obviously, Pitts was at the top. But going into next year, a guy that I made a game film of against Vanderbilt last week was Trey McBride. He's a senior, 6'4", 260. Just again looking at the ranks for the incoming the tight end class coming out this year. You got Billingsley, you got Kate Otten, and I've got McBride and Kate Otten kind of like number 3 after Weidemeyer, and Billingsley or whatever. But I'll tell you, when I made this game film, man, this guy's a baller. He's played 3 games, and he has 30 catches in 3 games, averaging 11.3 yards. He only has 1 touchdown, but man, when you watch this kid play, he's got body control, just the versatility. He's got vertical ability. He played 54% of his snaps, out on the slot and out wide. Has a 7.2 yak per catch. And you just watch his body control and his toughness and his blocking ability. I mean, Billingsley is an asset to me that I'm not sure how that translates to the NFL, given his size. Weidemeyer, is a nice player as well, who most likely will be the first one. Kate Otten, I'm a really big fan of too. I think these 4 are the top 4 in the class, at least for me right now. But I'm really impressed by his play. I'm somebody who I'm going to target maybe late in my rookie drafts next year if he does translate. But I'm really impressed by this kid. I think his stock will rise as we continue to go through the season. So I'm not expecting any of you to comment because it is a tight end, and I will not judge you at all because of that.
McBride. So, I love McBride. I have a lot of shares of McBride.
Yeah, I know. I think on the Slack chat you were saying that. So but so I don't know. I was really impressed. This is why I love making these game films for you guys, because you can really break down the film, like all the plays, not just the 2 highlight catches. And if you could watch more of the film other than the highlights, you really get to see a lot of good stuff. So, Daniel, who you got for your stock up?
Yeah, so I was going to go with Jackson Dart, but I already talked about him. We already talked about him. So I'm going to pivot to another quarterback that I really like and talk a little bit more about JT Daniels. It's been a bit of a roller coaster for JT Daniels this year as far as his stock goes. I know there were a lot of people that were pretty high on him coming into the year, myself included. Week 1 against Clemson, a lot of checkdowns. The game plan was sort of get it out quick. 135 yards. He had the interception. It wasn't an overly impressive game. They did get the win, and he came out with that oblique injury. And then in comes what's the guy's name? I'm drawing a blank on it right now.
Stetson Bennett.
Yeah, Stetson Bennett. Yes. So Stetson Bennett comes in, right, and he just goes crazy and throws 5 touchdowns in like 18 passes or something like that. And Twitter and the social media worlds are just going nuts, right? JT is going to lose his job. Stetson Bennett is the savior over here. He's going to be the man. There was talk of a QB controversy. I wasn't buying it personally. I was still a believer in JT. Lo and behold, JT takes over again, leads 2 scoring drives, impressive drives. And then for whatever reason, they put Bennett in, and he promptly throws one of the worst interceptions I've seen all year. So that controversy is over. And JT played really well. It wasn't a huge performance, but he threw the ball downfield. He got it to his playmakers. I think he had over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. And I think it puts him firmly back in the, late first, early second round conversation, because as we all know, that 2022 class, quarterback class, is still wide open.
I like it. Richard, who do you got?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about somebody here that you like, Brandon. It's Jahan Dotson, wide receiver from Penn State. He's 5'11", 185 pounds. He's a senior. He was a 4-star recruit out of high school. His first 2 years, he was overshadowed, by KJ Hamler, but he still was able to produce, as being the third option there behind Hamler and Fryermuth. Last year, Hamler moved on to the NFL. Dotson kind of took over that lead role as the pass catcher. In 9 games, he had 52 receptions, 884 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And then obviously he's off to a great start so far this year. He is once again the focal point of that offense. I think that production like that in the Big Ten is going to get him at least day 2 draft capital. And he still has games this year against Ohio State, Michigan, and Michigan State to even improve it even further. So that's kind of my stock up guy. I think he's going to start rising up some boards real quick. Obviously, you were ahead of the game, Brandon. So you got him up there a little bit further than the consensus. But yeah, that's who I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, I like him. I think he's I really like his ability. So
yeah.
Sam, who you got?
Well, I was going to go with Keaton Slovis, but since we talked about him, I was going to pivot to Sean Tucker. But since we talked about him, I'm going to pivot again. Going to go stock down on a player, but it's not entirely his fault, and that player is Zay Flowers. His quarterback, Phil Jurkovich, got hurt, and they passed for 34 yards in the game after he got hurt. Flowers had 10, which was, for you analytics guys, receiving market share wasn't bad. I think 30%. That's right about 30%. Exactly. Yeah. So, I'm not too worried about him as a player. Obviously I think he's still a pretty talented guy, but as far as the production, as far as the attention, I just don't think he's going to have any opportunity. And even the game before that, he started to look a little down. He had that explosive week 1, but week 2, 2 catches for 68 yards against UMass. So, he's looking a little down. Hopefully Jurkovich can come back next year strong. Maybe Flowers will stay and have a breakout season next year. We'll see what happens. But for now, I think he's got to be dropped off a little bit just in terms of the production.
Cool. Yeah, we did. Did you see that film review that Corey and I and Britt did on Zay Flowers it's on the
I
on
did.
this channel.
That's kind of what introduced me to him. I did like him. I thought he looked pretty solid, but
I mean, he definitely, I just don't know. I question his physicality at the catch point, and that, but in any case, I mean, look, when you lose your guy throwing you the ball, man, that's kind of tough,
Right.
So,
right.
But he's got a lot of film for those NFL scouts to make a decision on already. So, all right, Dwight, why don't you wrap up the stock up segment or stock down?
It's stock down on Spencer Rattler just because I don't like his hair. That's it.
Fair.
No. I feel like I'm piling on at this point. I mean, it seems like the Twitter sphere, the scouting, all of a sudden everybody's down on him, but I've been down on him for a while. He's always been number 2 for me behind Howell. He's always been there. I just don't see I see the big arm, but I don't see the decision making. He's mobile, but he's not a good runner. He doesn't, when he gets out in the open and takes off, he's not particularly elusive. I saw him get cut in so many games of him last year. I seen him he couldn't beat half the defenders. It felt like he was constantly getting dragged down, 6-7 yards. I never saw him break like those big runs that you want from those mobile quarterbacks like that. So he's always been number 2 for me, and now he's actually my 3rd. So I just don't see it. I just see a product of the system in Oklahoma, and I just don't see an NFL quarterback. Well, I'm not going to say I don't see an NFL quarterback. I don't see a top elite quarterback like I think we want him to be. I think he could be a serviceable NFL quarterback, but he's going to need some time, and he's going to have to mature in his decision-making and his ability to manage a game. So I'm down pretty good on Rattler at this point.
Yeah, well, I think I talked about him on my podcast today. As I talked about my QB ranks and stuff, that I had to knock him down a little bit too. I have Howell above him as well. I mean, I think the NFL, they just need consistency. He's going to drive an NFL coach nuts. You know what I mean? Just making, he's got to clean up the decision making and consistency. All right, so we got a question here on the chat. It says, you guys don't notice the Baylor running backs? I can't say that I've spent a lot of time looking at Baylor running backs, but I'm going to list the guys here and see if you guys have even talked about them. Abram Smith is a senior running back. He's the lead guy with 47 attempts. Treston Ebner is a senior running back with 42 attempts. And then Tay McWilliams looks like he's a sophomore, as far as rushing. So have you guys done any work or noticed any of those players?
I'm a little bit. Abram's a C2C guy right now. Like he's got the production. He's having a hell of a year, but I don't tend to trust anybody in that Baylor offense. And they haven't really played anybody at this point. So they got Iowa State this weekend. Let's see how he does against them. I had a couple notes on him. He's got good size at 5'11", 220. He's averaging 8 yards a carry. So I mean, he's having a hell of a year. But let's see what he does when he gets against Iowa State, and maybe then we'll look a little closer. But for now, he's just a product of the system, I think. So.
Yeah. If anybody, I'd probably take a look at Tay McWilliams a little bit as a sophomore, who's, averaging 13 yards a carry after 12 attempts, 156 yards. So although he hasn't caught a pass anyway. All right, so let's get to the burning week 4. This player is a huge riser in my ranks. I think I'm going to go first here, and I promise after this podcast I won't talk about, Blake Corum anymore, okay? But I have this guy in every league. He's just been super productive. 48 carries, 407 yards, 8.5 yards a tote, 7 TDs, and he catches the ball. He's productive out of the backfield. But the thing I love about him is his speed, man. I mean, you guys saw that run down the sideline this past weekend. He's got a compact frame, and usually he's 5'8", 200. And if you've listened to my podcast before, you know that like smaller backs I kind of tend to fade. That's why I kind of faded Gainwell. But I watched Gainwell play this week, sitting on my couch on Sunday playing for the Eagles. As ironic as that is, that he was landed on the Eagles after I trashed him pretty much all year last year. But I think if Gainwell can make it, Blake Corum can make it if he, continues this production. I know he's splitting carries with Haskin, and Edwards is getting in and mop-up duty. And I can see Edwards maybe even getting in that rotation, which I hope he does. And I'd like to see Corum get a full workload. But, looking at that 2023 class after the top 3, Robinson, Bigsby, Gibbs. I mean, you can put Zach Evans in there, maybe Chase McClellan. I got Blake Corum right up there in the 5 or 6. I mean, I'm looking at the guys after him. With Kendall Milton hasn't done anything. Marshawn Lloyd's, Berger, Devin Akane, Trey Sanders, Sean Tucker's there, Diamante Tranium. I mean, it's still up for grabs, but this kid's going to get production, and he's going to be here next year because he's only a sophomore. I think he's a huge riser. I think he, has now been given the opportunity. He's taken advantage of it, and I think you guys are seeing him on the field, man. He's a special player. Even given his size, I think he's strong as shit, and he's built like a rock and catch the ball, and he's fast, stock up. I think he's only going to get better.
Yeah, his speed power combination is pretty stupid. It's fun to watch, but
So we'll see.
It's not even fair.
What's not fair?
His speed power combination. I mean, it's just not fair.
I'm glad you like him. Yeah. Christian, I'm going to let you go, and I'll tell you what, I love your pick, dude, because he was stifled for 2 years, and now he's in a system that is making him flourish, and I think you're absolutely right. He is a huge riser, and he's in a huge riser in my rank. So tell us about your guy.
Yeah, so I've got Kentucky wide receiver Wandel Robinson, and like you said, this guy unfortunately was stuck in Nebraska for 2 years where they were not utilizing him to his full potential. He comes to Kentucky this year, and so far in 3 games, he has 18 catches for 337 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also has 3 carries for 73 yards on the ground, so almost 25 yards a carry in the limits of carries he's had. But the biggest thing is 18.7 yards per reception. At Nebraska, he only had 10 yards of reception for his career there. So, I mean, he's seeing almost double the downfield work that he was seeing at Nebraska. And for me, that's really encouraging. And then as I was getting excited to talk about Wandel Robinson today and preparing for this today, Jarek Backus from Campus to Canton, I know you saw this, Brandon. I saw you share it. Put a little chart on Twitter today showing the top 10 Power 5 wide receivers that are 2022 eligible, showing their weighted dominator rating and things like that. And Wandel Robinson has the 2nd highest receiving yards per team pass attempt in the country at almost 4. So, I mean, this guy's rocking a 37.4 weighted dominator rating in the SEC right now. And, 5'11", 185, just like Dotson. I mean, this guy has crazy speed, and now we're actually seeing him be utilized downfield. So he's a guy that's a big riser. I think he's a contender to, probably be the 5th, 6th wide receiver taken in this class. Definitely a day 2 prospect for me that'll be an early declare. So he's a big riser for me.
When you think of a guy like Wandale, right? I mean, you have to think that situation matters, right? Where these guys play, what systems they're in, just how they're utilizing. We talked about DJU maybe not getting utilized and maybe adjusting, their offense to fit his needs. So, I think it's great. Good call for Wandale, man. He made the right call to get out of Nebraska. All right, Daniel, who's your guy?
Yeah, I'm going to go with another smaller guy in Josh Downs. He started out slow. Him and Sam Howell both out of the gate. It was not a great start. That first game was rough for Sam Howell. The entire offense suffered. These last 2 games, he's really turned it on, man. And him and Howell just have a special connection. I like what I see in his route running. I like his speed. I like his ability to get open in space and then just take one to the house. You know, we saw some of that in this last game. He had 208 yards and 2 touchdowns, I believe it was. 339 yards, 4 touchdowns on the year. He's definitely a riser for me. I'm not too worried about his size, to be honest. I think the NFL they've shown that they're moving more in that direction, or at least that they're open to moving in that direction. Guys like Elijah Moore, Devontae Smith, Rondale Moore, Jalen Waddle, all smaller guys, even a Tyreek Hill, right? I mean, just one of arguably the most dominant wide receiver in the NFL, and he's undersized. So I think he's going to continue to rise. And I have him, I think, at 24 in my rankings right now. So top 25.
Yeah, I like it. Richard, who do you got?
So I'm going to go with my guy, Matt Corral, the QB from Ole Miss. I was debating between talking about him or Kyron Williams. But I mean, it wouldn't be right if I didn't talk about Matt Corral, right? So heading into the season, he was kind of like my guy. I planted my flag on him. As kind of like the next Joe Burrow type riser, leading up to the NFL draft. He has elite arm talent. He's got a combination of arm strength and accuracy. He could put the ball wherever he wants. He's extremely mobile. He's able to extend plays in the pocket, out of the pocket, and he's also able to run and gain yards, get first downs. The one area that I was concerned about and I wanted to see improvement, kind of similar to Spencer Rattler, is the decision-making, right? Everybody knows about the 2 horrible games from last year where he had 11 interceptions. Well, according to PFF so far this year, he is one of 2 quarterbacks with 0 turnover-worthy plays. Now, I know that he's played a little bit of a softer schedule. He's got the meat of it coming up. But so far, he has shown me that he has really matured in his decision-making. He's not taking those risks. He's willing to throw the ball away. Now, like I said, the rest of the season, he has a daunting schedule. He has to go to Alabama, to Knoxville, and to Auburn. All right. Then he has home games against Arkansas, LSU, Texas A&M, and he's got a sneaky matchup against Malik Willis and Liberty coming up here soon. So Corral's actually my QB1 for the 2022 draft class, and I think that by the end of the season, he's going to be a top 5 NFL draft pick in April.
Nice. Sam, who you got?
Well, I like that Matt Corral talk a lot. Yeah, he's definitely running up the ranks for me too. I'm going to go with the guy that I talked about last week in my preview when I previewed the UNC Virginia game, and that is QB Brennan Armstrong, who absolutely lit it up against UNC. And I went back and watched I didn't get to watch live. I did go back and watch the condensed game that the ACC posted, and then I also watched this condensed game against Illinois, and it really surprised me. I mean, I see some legitimate NFL traits from the guy. I see, arm strength. Ironically, Armstrong was his kind of a big concern for him last year, and one of the reasons that he wasn't super productive. But this year, I see it. I see him throwing 50-yarders. I see it with accuracy. I see him throwing it with a little bit of velocity over the middle. I see him throwing it with touch downfield. I see him making some read progressions. His accuracy is massively improved. I'm not sure why this guy's not getting more buzz, to be honest. He just put up 550 yards and 4 touchdowns against UNC. He's got 1,200 yards through the air through 3 games in the season, 11 touchdowns, just 2 picks. And he's putting up good tape too. I remember seeing a list that came out after the games this weekend. I forget what site it was on, but it was ranking the top 25 draft eligible QBs, and he wasn't even on the list. And I was like, this guy might be like my QB7 for the class right now. I don't know if any of you guys have watched him, but it's making me feel like I'm going kind of crazy. But he's rising up in my ranks real fast.
And he was supposed to be just a running quarterback, and like a C to C.
That's the thing. He's mobile too. I didn't even mention that. He ran for 550 yards last year.
Yeah, he hasn't been running as much this year, and he's definitely settled down. His mechanics are the only thing that worries me. He's all over the place.
Absolutely, the mechanics are very weird, and definitely need fixing. But I think he has
a lefty
traits to work with.
Those damn lefties. Damn lefties, almost as bad as gingers. Anyway,
almost.
Oh, that's too funny. Who do you got, Dwight?
You know who I got, baby. I haven't got a chance to get onto a podcast and talk about Kenneth Walker yet, man. Shit.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
You got the floor. Go for it.
Like I said, but you know, I've been high on him through the process. Like before,
Absolutely.
I was high. I was happy he was going to Michigan State. But all I saw in the past was patience and vision. And you wanted to see more than that. And that kid, he looks so much different this year. I mean, he's running with purpose, power. He can get outside. He's got pretty good speed. More than I thought he had, that's for sure. Still not. I still have him. I have him at RB16, so he's still. But I started the season with him at 45. But I mean, he's almost matched his production his first 2 years at Wake in 3 games at Michigan State. So I mean, everybody knows what he's doing now. So now we got the meat of the schedule, though. We got the Big Ten defenses. We'll see how Sparty's offensive line holds up when they're actually facing, huge defensive lines and battles in the trenches, which they haven't really had yet. I thought Northwestern's defense was better, but then they've been getting gouged since then. So there's still a little bit of apprehension here, but I absolutely love what I've seen. I want to see a little bit more pass catching. He had a couple receptions the last game. He looks smooth doing it. So I think it's there, but it's just something that, State's gotten away from that the last couple of years. So it's definitely something that I want to see him develop, and to be a complete back. But man, he is running like a man possessed this year. And it's hard to watch him as a State fan without seeing Le'Veon Bell, like when Bell played at State. He has that patience, the vision, the ability to go inside, outside. I mean, he is not afraid to hit somebody. He's got really solid moves. I mean, I wouldn't say they're like electric or amazing, agility and stuff, but he's got enough. He's got enough to be in a 2022 class that, I mean, it needs something. So I love Kenneth Walker, and being he's playing for my home team, it makes me love him even more. So.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point with the 2022 class kind of wide open theory. He could be one of these guys that rises at the end, and by the time, December rolls around, he could be, squarely in the top 5 if he just continues to produce and starts to get the, national attention. So I remember in the Slack chat a while ago, you were talking about him. I think that's maybe where my Debbie Reaper nickname emerged with you, Dwight. I said I didn't like him, and you were like, well, because I remember watching him against Clemson last year. And he was running horizontal. It's not true.
Yeah. He was a different player at Wake. At Wake. At Wake. He seemed timid. Like you can see that he had some burst in power. Like Dwight said, though, this year he looks completely different.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Like I said, situation changes. I mean, people, it changes. I think it makes a difference.
Jacked up, man. That single digit number, and that he looks jacked up. He looks crazy. Like if I see him when I'm in Lansing this week, and I see him walking around, I'm going the other direction, man. He is a scary looking dude, man. He looks a lot different than what he did at Wake. So
nice. All right, so we got week 4 coming up, and like we talked about pregame, you got to enjoy every moment, good gentlemen. So we're going to talk about our games this week. The game, we're just going to pick a game and maybe talk about some players that we're excited to watch. To me, Texas A&M and Arkansas, I want to watch Treylon Burks. But for me, I'm more interested in the Arkansas rushing attack. There's 2 guys there. Raheem Sanders, I want to see continue. He was a 5-star or a 4-star prospect. But there's another guy on this team, just as a little deeper discussion, because we already know about Treylon Burks. We don't need to talk about him. AJ Green is a guy who is a running back that I'm going to be doing some film work on. He is part of that Arkansas running back, with Raheem Sanders. And I mean, last week they just, pummeled, not last week, but 2 weeks ago, I think they just pummeled Texas. And, there's a lot of guys rotating in that backfield. So I'm excited to, see how that develops, see if any other wide receivers don't emerge when Treylon Burks is in the NFL next year. And from the Texas A&M standpoint, I don't think Haynes King is going to play. Nice job, by the way, Rich, on his week 1 film. I'm almost ready to post that. That'll be up tomorrow. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, of course.
But, Isaiah Spiller, we don't need to talk about him. Weidemeyer, Nice Smith, DeMoss, we already talked about. So I think it's going to be a great game. I'm interested to see how that Arkansas running game and see if anyone emerges out of that backfield. So I'm kind of going on the deeper side than the assets that we already know. So, Christian, I see you got Tennessee again?
I do. There's only a couple
Surprise.
ranked versus ranked games this week, so we'll go down to Gainesville, where my Vols will be playing the Gators, and we've won 5 of the last 28 in that series. So I don't know why I'm excited, mainly because this is the 4th game of the Josh Heupel era at Tennessee, which is a powerhouse, fast-moving offense if it's rocking and rolling the way it should be. So I'm just excited to continue to see the progression of that. The thing is, though, I mean, Hendon Hooker was the quarterback last week after Joe Milton the first 2 games. So I'm curious to see what Tennessee's plan is at quarterback, to see if they go with the more mobile running guy or the guy that Heupel hand selected to run the fast-paced offense. But really the only player in Devy that we're really focused on in this game is the freshman quarterback at Florida, Anthony Richardson. Will he play? If he does play, I'm sure it'll be the biggest coming out party we've ever seen, because that's how things go for Tennessee against Florida. But keep your eye on Tennessee's running game. Tennessee's rotating 3 backs this year: Tyon Evans, Jabari Small, and Jalen Wright, who have all looked really good. But Richardson's the guy that we're worrying about in Devy.
I agree.
Not
I
worrying
think
about,
everyone's
but
excited.
focused on.
Yeah. All right, Daniel, who you got? What game you interested in watching?
So I'm going to go with the Notre Dame-Wisconsin game. I know I picked Notre Dame last week in my game selection, so people are probably going to start thinking I'm a closet Notre Dame fan, something like that. But no, I really picked it because it was a ranked game, and it might end up being a good game. And I'm sold on pieces of the Notre Dame offense, but I'm not sold on Notre Dame offense as a whole. Wisconsin may pose a bigger challenge to them. They're typically a pretty well-coached team. Kyren, he continues to move up my rankings. I'm a big Kyren guy. I like his pass-catching ability. I like his speed. I like his burst, and I like his power. Kind of like what you talked about with Corum, Brandon. I see a little bit of that in Kyren as well. Smaller guy, but he plays tough. He's got that receiving ability. Mayer, again, we all know about him. Tight ends, yeah. We don't talk about tight ends, right? But I like him. I think he's a riser as well, right? I mean, he's going to be the number 1 tight end in 2023. Keep watching that. On the Wisconsin side, really the only thing I'm interested in seeing is it going to continue to be the Chaz Malusi show, or is Berger going to get in and get a little bit more work? I have some major concerns. I was really high on Berger coming into the season. Thought he was going to get, the majority of that workhorse role. Hasn't materialized that way. So I'm just kind of curious to see if he earns a bigger share as these games progress.
I like it. Rich, who do you got?
So we talked about it a little while ago. So the game that I chose was Clemson and North Carolina State. Clemson has really struggled, that offense. So going into Raleigh, playing on the road against North Carolina State, I think that North Carolina State can pull the upset. They have a really good running game with Zonovan Knight and Ricky Persons. I think they can control the clock. And I think that they can continue to frustrate that Clemson offense. They're fairly predictable. At this point, if you can stop Will Shipley and make those receivers beat you, I think that you have a great opportunity to win the game. So I'm looking at North Carolina State to pull an upset at home, and Clemson kind of getting like a reality check again.
I like it. I always root for the underdogs. I love seeing these high top 4 or 5 programs get knocked off. So just to have, just somebody maybe different at the end of the season to watch play in a championship game. Sam, who do you got?
Well, it seems a lot of us have repeats since I'm going with the UNC game again. This time they're playing Georgia Tech. And, last week I was talking about how Howell and Downs got off to a little bit of a slow start week 1, bounce back week 2. I wanted to see them build on it and build a little chemistry, get it rolling. Obviously, they both exploded in week 3. Downs is a riser, as we've talked about a little bit. So, again, just want to see them to continue that momentum, see if they can keep doing it, if Downs can prove that he can do it over a full season. But there's another interesting piece in UNC. Last week, we talked briefly about Caleb Hood and how he only got the true freshman RB, how he only got 5 touches in the first 2 games. It was kind of like, is he really going to get involved this season? Maybe he's not impressing coaches, but they gave him 10 touches this time around, and he averaged 9 yards a touch, and he scored. Looked pretty impressive. Seems like Chandler isn't going to totally lock down the backfield, so we'll see if Hood can continue to earn more touches week by week. Might be a little bit of a riser before too long. And on the other side, Georgia Tech obviously has Jahmyr Gibbs. Not too much else that's super interesting, but Gibbs, interestingly, has not been used that much by them. He's got like less than, I think he's got like around half their backfield touches, which is like fine. But for someone of his talent, I feel like he should be getting a lot more. He came off the field late against Clemson, just weirdly in like I think it was a 2-minute situation, and he's like a great pass catcher. So it's kind of weird to me. I'd like to see them continue to use him and get him more touches against good defenses, so we can see if he's really belongs to that tier with Bigsby and Bijan. Or well, Bijan's probably a tier ahead, but right there with Bigsby.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, Gibbs's production, I don't believe, has been as productive as last year. So, right?
No, not quite.
It's been kind of down a little bit. He hasn't seemed to have been flashed like he did last year as much.
Right.
So,
right.
Dwight, who's your game? Wrapping us up on the games.
Yeah, I had a hard time picking one because I got to the sheet last, and you guys picked all the good ones. So, yeah, there's really not. Yeah, I know exactly. I'm just gonna glaze over a couple because I'm interested in Iowa State and Baylor. Baylor's 3-0, blowing people out, but they haven't really played anybody. So I want to see what Iowa State does and see if Breece Hall can get it back on track. I like Rutgers versus Michigan, another one, pitting 2 3-0 teams against each other. See if Rutgers has been scoring like crazy too. So we'll see if they can do it against Michigan. West Virginia and Oklahoma is also kind of an interesting game. Obviously, Oklahoma, all their pieces. West Virginia is just a scrappy team that tends to play teams really hard and just took down. Who did they just take down? I want to say Virginia Tech. Yeah, and that was one of the better games last week. And then this isn't, but my game of the week that I want to watch from a football standpoint that has got Devy guys way down on the charts. But I want to watch Thursday night. I want to watch Marshall versus Appalachian State. I love those types of games with teams like that. I love both running backs, particularly Marshall's redshirt freshman. Rasheen Ali is absolutely having a hell of a season. 293 yards, 7 touchdowns. He's caught 10 passes too. He kind of does a little bit of everything. He needs to add some weight. He's 6 foot 195, I think. So he's a little slender, but he's having a hell of a good season. And those teams, I mean, App State always has good running backs, that get, late draft capital and stick around on rosters and things like that. So it's just a fun football game. Those are the type of, I like watching those football games when the NFL puts us Houston versus Carolina on Thursday night that I really could care less about. So, yeah, I'll watch Marshall take on App State. So,
I love it, man. That you're just a football guy. Just wants to watch a good game, which is nice sometimes. You don't worry about players.
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
You're just like watching the game. So it looks like we got a question here towards the end of our show here. Josh Cameron, you guys like Brandon Thomas?
Yes.
So okay, he is the Devy darling. I'm going to put Devy darling with a capital D and D.
Yes.
So he is in the Twitter echo chamber as we speak. Dwight, your eyes lit up. You got all excited and cheery over there. So I'm going to let you take this one.
I haven't got to watch him as much as I'd like, but what I've watched is very impressive. And Felix is super high on him, man. Like he put him up
I know.
right there with like the top 4 running backs in the 2023 class. We're like, whoa, slow down, Felix. But what I've seen so far, man, I like him. So we'll see.
Yeah, I did a game film on him. A lot of his production came on 3 very long, carries. I think he did show some vertical, lateral movement. Definitely showed some toughness. He looked like a good back, but I didn't see anything that vaults him into the stratosphere. I mean, I saw that podcast that Felix did and had him up there and said he'd put him right behind Gibbs. And I'm like, easy, big fella. Like, wow.
Yeah, slow down there.
I mean, Jesus, it's 2 games. You know what I mean? But yeah, he seems to be like, this is the exact kind of player that someone gets excited about. And, it gets into the Twitter thing and then it just snowballs into, not trying to take anything away from Brandon Thomas. All right. But just, I think, after 2 games to put him at that level, I think, there's a lot of missed tackles in that game that I made a game film on this channel. So, all right, this is pretty cool. We got another question here by Letty. Is Letty Brown RB3 right now in the 2022 class? Timothy, I don't believe that he is. But I mean, he has been super productive at West Virginia. I know that Mel Kiper has him, I believe, in his top 10 running backs for the 2022 class. So, you know, I don't know what you think about Mel Kiper, if you like him or if you don't, but I did a game film on him. I mean, he has pass catching ability, decent size too. Do you guys have any thoughts on Letty Brown? Have you guys watched him extensively? I can't say that I've watched a ton of Letty Brown.
He's been super productive. He's definitely rising in my
absolutely.
ranks. I have him currently in like the Kenneth Walker, Tyler Goodson range. So right around like 10 to 15, 10 to 18 range.
Right.
But I mean, I want to see him like Dwight was saying. I want to see him against Oklahoma this weekend.
Yeah,
he can really kind of put himself on the map if he has a really good game. He had a really good game last weekend against Virginia Tech. But yeah, 10 to 18 range is where he's at for me right now.
He's got good vision
this year.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Sam.
Oh, okay. I hadn't gotten around to watching him this year, but I did watch his tape from 2020 in the spring. Saw a few things to like. You know, good patience, solid vision, tough finisher. I like the way he runs. Good short area burst too. But I didn't see a whole lot of like, you know, high level athleticism, make you miss, you know, do a lot on your own, create big plays. Didn't see like the best balance. So, you know, I think he's a solid player. But I don't know if he's quite as high as RB3 in the class for me right now. I'm not sure that he's going to be an RB1 in the NFL. Maybe a solid, you know, change of pace back kind of guy. But I think if you called him RB3 right now, that would be a little bit overreacting to some high production through a few games.
Yeah, I'd say day 3 pick if he's lucky.
Yeah, I agree. Like a role player, you know. So,
perfect.
You know, there's going to be a lot of those guys, right? I mean, you know, kind of like the talked about it on my podcast today. I was talking about my deep dive player, a player that I really like, but I'm going to save him for maybe next week's episode to talk about him. But you know, like the Tyler Goodsons, Jerome Fords, Letty Browns, Zonovan Knights. I think they're kind of all in that same, you know, late day 2, early, you know, day 3 possible capital. But they're going to be backups in the NFL. I don't see them being, you know,
kind of like who we replaced at West Virginia, Larry Roundtree. Or no, I'm sorry, he was at Missouri, but similar ranges as Larry Roundtree type player.
Exactly. Kylan Hill, you know.
Yeah.
That kind of role, you know, that they'll find it. You know, and again, it's all going to be on landing spot and opopportunity in the NFL. It plays a role. I don't care what anyone says. It absolutely plays a role. So, all right, I'm going to throw out next week's question. All right. So we're not going to go back to all the names and everything. So next week's question, guys, is going to be for the burning question. I'm going to give it to you here for tonight. Is going to be name a player outside your top 50 that you want to plant your flag on. So I want next week's episode, whoever can join us, to go a little deeper. Let's get some deep names next week on this thing.
Okay.
And have some fun. So any parting shots? It's about an hour. It's our time. I appreciate you guys.
Good times.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So if you're out there watching right now, I appreciate the time and hope you enjoy the show. If you're watching it later on YouTube, and please give us a like, a subscribe. And we appreciate your time. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate it.
And don't leave yet. Thanks, guys.